Hi, I'm Dr. Bertice Berry, and I want to tell you a story. There was something really powerful and magical about growing up Black in the 60s. We had moved from shame and believing that we were nothing more than the descendants of people who had been beaten down through enslavement to reclaiming our roots in Africa. We were proud, and Black pride was the thing. We said it loud. We were Black and we were proud. Ooh, and as David Hawkins argues in Power versus Force, we have moved from shame and anger and into that vibration of pride where you can begin to turn your story around, bringing energy to yourself and anybody else who comes in contact with you. We were proud. I was in the fourth grade and I had this teacher, Miss Clausen, who would bring in art and artifacts and leave them around so that we could touch them and see them as our own. And she had this large bust. It was all black, ebony black, of Nefertiti. And it was kept in the safe in the office. And every day, someone who had displayed leadership the day before had the opportunity to go to the office and bring back this large bust, to carry it into the room and put it at the front of the classroom where we could all admire it. And it was a source of pride to be able to carry Nefertiti into the room. Well, Miss Clausen had to be out for a week. I think maybe there was a death in the family or her son was doing some great achievement, and so she was out for a week. And we had a substitute teacher, Miss Turner, who was there. And it was my turn. It was going to be my turn to go and bring Nefertiti in the room. And I've done it several times before because I worked hard to get that honor to bring Nefertiti into the room. And so this young boy, and I'm going to call him Tommy, that's not his name, but I'm going to call him Tommy, he decided that it was his turn. And I said, no, it's my turn. And he said, no, it's my turn. You remember you had your turn and it was my turn. And she said, when we came back this week, it was going to be my turn. It's my turn. And he argued his case. And so Miss Turner, he had already gotten up and was running out on his way to the office. And he came back with Nefertiti and he looked over at me. And it felt as if he was looking at me as if to say, I beat you. That's what it felt like to me. He might not have been. He was just looking at pride as we all had done. But he went to put Nefertiti down on the desk and he missed the base, but he caught the base at the neck. And we all stared in horror as that neck hit that desk, and it didn't fall off right away. It cracked. Even now, I can feel the sensation and hear that crack that went around the neck of Nefertiti, and then that head just clumped over to the side. Collectively, we all gasped in horror. I don't think we could breathe for probably 5 minutes. We were just staring. No one knew what to do, including our teacher. No one knew what to say. This poor young man was shaking and crying, and he's like, I didn't do it. It was broke already. He came up with everything he could possibly come up with. And we went from pride back down to shame. But first we were doing blame and all of that. And it was devastating. We had another entire week. We had that whole week to get through until our teacher came back. And our substitute had called the teacher and let her know what happened. And we were like, what did she say? And she said, she will deal with it when she comes back. And this substitute teacher was as horrified as we were. Well, the next week we had to go through the weekend, and I could barely move that weekend. I was so frightened about what was going to happen. We all believed that this was an original artifact and that we kept it in a safe and that we had destroyed something so great, but not just the thing that was great, this thing that represented our greatness. And there was no way we could get it back. We tried to repair that bust. We thought we could put it up and tape it and glue it. None of those things were going to happen. Well, our teacher came back, and she stood at the front of the room, and she walked back and forth, and she didn't say anything. And we sat there just shaking with our heads lowered because there was so much shame around breaking Nefertiti. And she looked over at this young man, and who never looked up. She had called him to the front of the class, and he just stood there with his head like this and shoulders slumped. And she said, "Why did you go to the office to bring it out? No one told you to do that." And then she looked over at me and said, "It was your responsibility. It was your turn." And I said, "Yes." And she said, I already learned that someone took over and decided it was his turn and not your turn. And you tried to say that it was your turn, but you didn't get to have a turn. I understand that happened." She said, "But when you are given the responsibility to do something, don't let anyone take your responsibility away from you." Ooh. And then she looked to the rest of the class, and she said, "You all knew it was Bertice's turn, but because you like him, you sided with him, and you didn't stand up for her. You are also responsible for not taking the side of right." And then she looked at this young man, and she said, "Young man, I want you to remember this day for the rest of your life. If you lie, if you cheat, if you try to take a turn that is not yours, if you try to win something or get something that doesn't belong to you, you will break your mother's heart." I don't know how we got through the rest of the year, but that sense of responsibility has always stayed with me. And I also learned from her as we moved forward that the thing wasn't the valuable thing. It was what the thing represented. It was just what it represented. She said, "We can get another one, but there's no reason to get another one. We have to be responsible for what we have." And she said, "You can't stay in what happened in the past. You have to move forward, but you have to remember who you are." We couldn't process that part. It took me years to learn to process that when something happens that gives you a great deal of shame or guilt, something from your past, your parents' past, your ancestors' past, you have to find a way to move through it and into pride to say, what are we going to do now? Who are we going to be? Are we going to stay stuck in what our ancestors did or didn't do? Or are we going to change the world? Let's all take responsibility for changing the world and making it a better place. I love you.